Hello everybody, Keith here again. This is my What's in Bloom at the end of the month, take 2. I did the first one 3 or 4 days ago, and when I put it onto the computer and had a first look at it on a big screen, it was blurred. The whole lot was out of focus. So I came poddling back downstairs, picked the camera up, had a look at the lens, and this daft ape, if you're looking at, had left it on manual focus. So of course it wasn't coming into focus. Anyway, hopefully that's sorted out now, and you can see my ugly mug in perfect sharpness. So let's make a start, shall we? First time bloomer for me. This is my NoID Epidemic, which is probably orange ballerina, or ballerina orange, or something like that. I love these. The shape of the flower, I just think is absolutely gorgeous. So unusual. This bird-like lip. I just think that's fantastic. I've had problems with this plant. Some of these leaves have got a white edge. That, I'm pretty sure, was some sort of insect damage. I've sprayed it now a couple of times and all the new growth is coming up clear. It's growing very well. We've got a great tangle of roots, like a mangrove swamp down there, all the exposed roots, but they're all going down into the pot pretty much. We've got quite a lot of really individual plants on here. This cake is coming out at different levels, but the whole thing is doing well, and we've got canes which are going to be really big that are still growing. This is one of the relatively short and slender ones that's actually flowered, so some of these are looking taller and heavier, so as and when that might flower we should have an even better display than that. But I don't know about you, but that is pretty darn nice. So that's Epidendrum, probably orange ballerina or ballerina orange, I'm not sure which way around it goes, but it's so I'm told this ballerina hybrid is quite a common one. It's rare to see this in garden centre, which is where I bought it. That definitely jumped in my back pocket and followed me home, but that's doing ever so well. It lives up here on this top shelf of the rack all year round and does very well. My NoID white Cattleya. This is the second spike to bloom. It grew 2 spikes this year. I took the spike off the other one because it was over after I'd videoed it the other day. It had 2 flowers on that spike and there's 3 on this one. It's grown 2 canes a few years now, every year, but it's never flowered on both. And these are a pair of really cracking canes, so this thing's really happy. It's on a table by the window because normally, as you can see, I hang it up on these poles, part of the bracing for the conservatory, but if I do that, as you can see by the height of that and the height of the flower, I knock the flower about if I do that. So that's come down just while it's out. Pure white, that. These have opened about the same as the others do, but on the other cane it opened really flat. So it obviously can if it wants to. But I say NoID white Cattleya. I've had that quite a few years now, probably 5. Bought it on my first visit with my wife to the Royal Horticultural Society garden at Wisley, their HQ gardens, and this was in the garden centre. I've got this in the Nellie Isla, but the Nellie Isla is long gone. I can't grow anything that's sort of got odontoglossum sort of orchids in it. They do all right for a year or so, and I'm beginning to get the impression that sometimes we get these things and they'll do okay for a year, and they're kind of living on what reserves they built up while they were being prepped for sale, and then afterwards they just go backwards because we aren't giving them the ideal results. I've tried Nellie Isla, I've tried several Miltoniopsis, none of them are successful, so that's gone off the list. So have Miltonias for that matter. So I'll get some fowls. This little cutie is Equestris. Third flowering of this plant for me. Really tiny little thing, so cute. I love the colours. I'd like to find other forms of Equestris, but I haven't yet. And at least they've got the advantage of being small. Unlike Pink Twilight, of course, which is a ginormous one, and that's coming back into flower. Got a great big spike and it's shooting up. But this one, no, this is about as big as it gets from what I've read. Doesn't look at the moment as if this spike's going to form a keiki. The previous two bloomings, the end of the spike has grown a keiki. That's fine, I don't need any more, that's 3 of them. But you've got to admit that's a pretty sweet little Phalaenopsis. I do like these smaller blooms. Not too much to come, there's one more bud I think on that, and then depending whether it extends or whether it chucks a keiki out, I don't know. But that spike's nearly over. We've got new leaves, we've got new roots. It's doing very nicely. The roots are all the way down to the bottom of this pot. So, you know, that's a plant that's doing quite nicely. One you must be getting absolutely sick of seeing month after month. This is Mini Mark. It doesn't know when to stop. All I can do is keep walking fertiliser into it. We've got some new leaves coming, we've had some new roots come, and it's still putting new roots out, so I don't think there's a problem with this thing exhausting itself. But it just keeps putting out spike after spike. This one didn't even try to come upright. It's gone through more or less horizontal, so we've got a couple of flowers that are down near the bark, but at least now it's come over the edge of the pot and we're starting to see. It's not going to be a huge spike, this one, but yeah, a plant that's doing very nicely, thank you. I've had this a few years now. I bought this at the RHS show at Chatsworth, and I think that was about 2018, so I've had this about four years now. Again, it's quite a delicate flower. I do like it. The whole thing is really quite pretty. Another one that I got from the Chatsworth showing, so about 2017 or 18, I'm not quite sure which, without looking it up. This is the one that is probably Leodoro, but I've never had a scent of it, and they are supposed to be scented if they are Leodoro, but I remember somebody saying once there were 2 crosses, one seed parent, pollen parent, and then the other way around. They look exactly the same, one scented, one isn't, so you pay your money, you take your choice. It's still a very, I keep saying pretty a lot, don't I? It is quite an unusual colour combination, and somehow or other that combination of a yellowish orange and anything from pinks to purple works quite well. It's another one that spikes a lot. It's unusual as a fowl. The leaves are pale green rather than a darker green for this group. The other thing that you get with that pale green leaf, as far as I understand, when you get into this group of fowls, the spikes, unlike the common ones, don't dry up as soon as the flowers have dropped off, and you leave them until they do, because they can extend and branch for quite a long time. Now, this one dumped a couple of old spikes a while back. This one is beginning to darken, so it may be that this has had it and it'll pull it back. This one was the previous one. It started to die back and I've cut it off. Now I've put this one up, and you can see there we've got several buds developing on the end of that. We've got a new leaf. It doesn't grow ever so fast. We've got a new leaf. We've got plenty of nice roots going down through the pot. So it's another plant that I think is fairly happy. Just sits on the windowsill and minds its own business. A few days ago we had 2 flowers left, and now we've only got 1. You can see the other ones shrivelling up and dropping off. This is Phalaenopsis mannii. Got to say, I've only got 2 species fowls, and mannii and equestris are no more difficult to keep than any other, and they've got the big advantage of being smaller than a lot of them. So if you see either of those on offer from a nursery, I'd say go ahead. If you can keep ordinary Phalaenopsis, you can certainly keep these. It just sits, this one, on a northwest facing windowsill. Gets a little bit of afternoon sun, but not a lot. It's basically our kitchen windowsill, and it's quite happy in there. We've got a new leaf, we've got new roots, so again it's doing all right, but we shan't see that again for a little while. Right, this one I bought from Burnham's at the Welsh Orchid Show last year, 2021. As Doritis pulcherima. I think I saw somewhere the other day that it's now been subsumed into Phalaenopsis, so it's possibly Phalaenopsis pulcherima, but this is the white form, Varalba. The flower's not quite the same. The upper part of it's got a downward projecting spike, and the lip isn't flat. I don't know how well you can see it on there, but it sort of hooks up and over. So these must have an unusual pollinator, but nevertheless, I love this thing. There's 2 plants in the pot, which is how it came. I just repotted them up, and they're both growing well. I've got 2 spikes off one, which are both in flower now, and 3 on the other, and none of them have started to open yet, and they naturally just grow straight upright, which is great. Lots of roots, so 2 happy plants doing really well, and for a flower that is virtually just plain white with a little bit of yellow around the throat, that's pretty swish as well. So again, another species, either Doritis or Phalaenopsis, whichever. But this one actually tolerates more heat than most. This has been living in the conservatory on the top shelf of the rack. This has seen pushing 40 degrees centigrade through this summer. We've had some really hot days, even with the windows open. I've struggled to keep the temperature down, and it's never batted an eyelid. So this is a really good one for people in slightly hotter climates. You might get away with this if you not struggle with ordinary Phalaenopsis. A somewhat out of season nobly type dendrobium. This is Lady Coleman. It was registered about 1906, 1908, as I understand it, by Lord Coleman, the head of the Coleman's mustard empire over in Norfolk. He was a keen orchid grower and hybridiser. And somebody said once, oh, that looks a lot like nobly. Well, yes it does, but if you look at its ancestry on Blue Nanta, you find there's actually only about 10 or 15% of nobly in there. There's all sorts of things in it. This one has stayed reasonably manageable. The canes are not that big, although it's growing a nice strong cane from this year. The other one, which is out of view, which you might have seen in other videos, I bought at exactly the same time. There were a couple of cakeys from a fellow member of the East Midlands Orchid Society not long after I joined. They were the last two he got left. I was trying to work out which one he wanted. I don't want to take him back, and he let me have two for about a £5. So I was very happy, and for a while they sort of stayed around about this size. The problem is the other one, the canes are now getting on for 3 feet long. So having a small footprint and very tall, the blessed thing's unstable, and I'm having to actually tie it back to the structure of the rack, otherwise it'll just fall flat on its face. Difficult to know quite what to do. I've got all sorts of stakes and things in there, but it just doesn't want to know. So anyway, Lady Coleman, a very easy plant to grow, but not if you don't like big no-leaf types. Make a bit of room. Right. Dear old Spring Dream, which seems to flower more or less whenever it likes. It did flower in the spring, it's now flowering again. It's not doing very well. I repotted it in March this year, and I don't know whether that's affected the new growth, but they haven't done very well. They're only about 6 inches long, the two of them, and they've terminated. So unless things change dramatically next year, I could be in trouble with this. But it's another one that's getting a bit big and a bit awkward. There is another cane there, which I don't know, I think that's a little bit bigger, but again I think that's terminated very early. Not sure why. Not really sure why that would happen. But as I say, it's possible that it's just the disturbance factor from being repotted. This, as I say, sometimes it has purple fringes on the flowers. There's one there that does, but not always. Seems to vary from blooming to blooming and sometimes from spike to spike, but this one's nearly finished again. But the cages weren't taking off it because it got a bit silly. Right, the last one of mine, and one that wasn't in flower 3 or 4 days ago. This is my rescue Zygo, bought as Sensation, which it isn't, and the last time this was in flower somebody pointed out it's Louisendorf instead. Growing really well now. We've got lots of roots, we've got some nice big pseudo bulbs. The last 2 have been absolutely massive, far bigger than what it's grown before. And this flower spike hasn't even waited to show a new growth. It's just appeared out of nowhere with 5 on, and the 3rd one just trying to open here. I'm always chuffed when a Zygo flowers. It isn't scented. Well, I wouldn't know if it did because my sense of smell is absolutely dreadful, just like my dad. I've lost my sense of smell as I've got older. Yeah, I mean, Zygos are things people seem to be able to keep or not keep. And this one and my Zygonissia are growing nicely. I've got a species, Zygopetalum cranitum, which again I bought from the Welsh Orchid Show last year. Growing all right, hasn't shown any signs of flowering yet, but I don't think it'll be too long because it's getting quite a decent sized plant now. So this is the last of the ones that I can lay claim to. One I definitely can't lay claim to, and which was definitely better a few days ago. This is Brassica Evolution. I got this in spike from Spiceotic Plants at Malvern at the beginning of June. I'm pretty sure this is ready for a repot. The medium looks quite old. I'll have it out and have a look. We've got decent looking roots. We've got a nice strong new growth. That's moving quite quickly. Looking at the colour of the sheaths, we've got a new growth there, we've got a new growth here. So that's at least 3 new growths that might flower for me in the future. This must be a fairly powerful scent because I did actually catch a citrus whiff a couple of times, which is the best I could actually manage. Which is unfortunate. I'd like to think my sense of smell might come back one day, but I think it won't. Unusual flower, Brassica. First one I've ever had. I could have spent an absolute mint at Malvern. There were so many plants that I hummed and hawed over, and in the end I kept going back to this one. I thought, no, looked it up online on my phone. It said these are relatively easy to keep. They're very tolerant of conditions. I'm supposed to like it a bit more humid than I can generally keep it in here, but so far so good. It just gets watered regularly and sprayed every few days. Couple that'll be in flower next month, I think. My Psychosis, got a bud there and a continuation bud there. Something I am so fingered across so tightly about. It's grown a lot of new growth since I got it. I bought this, oh dear, when did we go to Madeira? 2016 I think, and I bought this on the way back. We called in RHS Wisley on the way to Gatwick Airport. just to kill a little bit of time and use the cafe. And I saw these in the garden centre. So on the way back from Gatwick home to Derby, we called in and there was this one left, and it was then out of, the flower had dropped, but I bought it and it's done well. So I've got a lot of new growths, and there is a new growth, can we see it? Just in there. I hope you can see that, because it's not the same shape as this one. This is much narrower, much harder, and it's trying to go vertical. I think I've got my second flower spike, and I am so chuffed, because I still don't know how the heck you induce one, but this has grown really well. It's been fed well. It's probably due for a repot. It's been in here, I don't know, a good 2 years now. It's a mix of bark and moss, so I'm probably going to have to fish it out and let it have a look and see what it's doing. But it's grown some very large pseudobulbs lately, and they come from all over the plant, so it's not a single direction of growth. I said it when we were looking at this as a development orchid last year, but the funny thing about Psychosis is that it's a plant that likes to be damp. It doesn't like to get water anywhere near its pseudobulbs. They go black almost instantaneously. If you can dry them out again, they won't rot, but if you get them wet, in other words, if the media comes up over the top of, you can't bury these. Some orchids you can bury the pseudobulbs. You bury the pseudobulbs on this one, there's problems. So Psychosis mariposa on the way. Hopefully we'll see that next month. One I hope we'll see. I have no idea whether we will or we won't. This is my Cattleya, or whatever the heck it is. In Cat Liante, I think, this week. Xingming Beauty Rainbow. It started putting out 2 new canes. I knocked one off, if you remember, when I was repotting it, the smaller one. We've got a replacement new growth come off the same side of the plant, so that's great. It's doing well. It grew new canes last year. The cane it's grown this year is much bigger, much thicker, so it's obviously happier. What we have got in there, can you see it? Yes, is a sheath. Now I shone a light through it the other day. There's no sign of anything in there yet. I've only had this just over a year. It's one of the 2 my daughter's bought for my birthday. By far the better one. It's done infinitely better than the other has. So I hope it flowers. It's a really big, bright, blousy Cattleya type. But we've got a good root system going down and exploring all the way through. Lots of roots and new roots and nubbins and all sorts. So this is one to keep an eye on. I can't really show you very easily, if you'll excuse the gonzo movements for a moment. Just while I get it centered, and then I can zoom in a bit more. Here we are. Yeah, not very good at guessing. You stopped the video for some reason anyway. This is a very unexpected treat. This is a third spike on the Amaryllis Hippeastrum Luna that I bought last year at the autumn RHS Chelsea show, an unusual one, and it suddenly put a spike up and flowered again, completely out of the blue, and not a time of year that I've ever had one flower before. So, let's try and get everything back as it was. Something like that. Something like that. Whoa. Sorry. Me and my big feet. So, get the screen round so I can see what I'm doing. Hope that's not been too ridiculous for you. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.